We have got a Thursday night show. How about that? A Thursday night show to provide you and deliver right here at the Voice of College Football. Welcome in. And you know what the drill is. You produce the show. Ultimately, you are the producer. Hit the like button and then jump on in the chat. Leave your comments and questions. I will get to them. Keep in mind that the Super Chat is available for you to contribute, as well as Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Search Mark Rogers TV, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. We appreciate your contribution. Just search Mark Rogers TV. All right, we rev up a big spring weekend here at the Voice of College Football early. Illinois on the field on a Thursday. Rutgers on Friday. Big Ten Thursday and Friday doubleheader there with the Fighting Illini of Brett Bielema going at it tonight. I have not seen any of it. It's on DVR and probably not worth watching. And then on Friday, Rutgers, and we're going to do a little Rutgers watch party for you as requested. Rutgers watch party on Friday. Then we make our way into Saturday, and as has been the case the past 3 Saturdays, we will be here all Saturday afternoon into the evening. Here at the Voice of College Football, we're going live at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday with all of you. Penn State hits the Big Ten Network at 2 Eastern, followed by a watch party, USC style, right here. So Kirk Herbstreit and the ESPNers will have nothing on us as we look in on USC football with Kirk and the boys. Saturday at 3 Eastern, that's noon Pacific time, as guess what? The Pac-12 has the spotlight on ESPN on Saturday. So watch party from USC, and then after that, we will do post-game West Virginia, post-game Oklahoma. We'll get you the times on those, but those will be later in the afternoon and into the evening, as we've got our guy Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football. He'll be at the Oklahoma spring game, and therefore we're going to do post-game as soon as he gets back. And before that, sandwiched in between USC and Oklahoma, West Virginia post-game. All right, shop Amazon. Use that link. I'm not telling you to shop Amazon, but you're going to shop Amazon, most of you. So when you do, please grab the link in the description section of any of the videos and put it somewhere where you will remember it and shop Amazon with us. Our phone lines will be open here in just a second. And again, I am looking at spring games on Saturday. Let me call them up here. And to run down my narrative for everybody in play on Saturday, I think we could do the next 90 minutes on Charleston Southern. They hit the field at 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday. Charleston Southern. So I want your comments and questions on the mighty whoever they are from Charleston Southern. What are they, the Charlies? All right. Let's get to the big boys. Iowa, no spring game. That's a missed opportunity. Why would you not have a spring game? If you play in the Big Ten, think of it this way. If you play in the Big Ten and you have a spring game, you're going to be on the Big Ten Network to attract fans, keep your current fans engaged, attract recruits. Whatever benefit comes from it, there cannot be a negative to being on TV. So if you're Iowa, why are you not holding a spring game to be on the Big Ten Network? And we all know that it doesn't have to be a game. If you don't want to hit, if you don't want to get the players put in harm's way, you don't have to approach it that way. Just call it a spring game, get on the Big Ten Network, and then do whatever you want. You can go 7-on-7 drills. Shoot, Michigan State does half of its spring game running drills. Do that. Nobody cares. And the people that care are still watching. Iowa, missed opportunity. I'm not going to blow it out of proportion. It's not a big deal. But you get on TV when you can get on TV. Illinois is on TV tonight. They're on the Big Ten Network. Rutgers is on the Big Ten Network on Friday night. If you're Iowa, get on the Big Ten Network at noon and hold a spring game. Again, do whatever you want. It doesn't have to be physical. You don't have to hit. You don't have to do anything. Show up and get the Iowa brand on the Big Ten Network. Have a spring game. Makes no sense to me. And then also we've got coming up on Saturday, Baylor, UCLA, and UCLA, like most of the Pac-12 schools, aside from USC, is on the Pac-12 network, which hardly anybody gets. So, and then we've got, let's see, Notre Dame on the Peacock Network. I believe that has to be paid for, so I will not be watching the Irish. For whomever I miss, I will do my best to backtrack and check it out on YouTube. So Notre Dame at 1, Ole Miss at 1, West Virginia at 1. Again, we're going to have West Virginia post-game right here at the Voice of College Football, simulcasted on our West Virginia channel at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, right here, talking West Virginia football after the Mountaineers. And, well, it won't be JT Daniels. We'll see the other quarterbacks in play for the Mountaineers. Texas Tech, LSU. We just released some LSU spring content, so check that out on our SEC channel. Penn State. Now, Penn State's playing on BTN at 2 o'clock Eastern Time, and we're going to be right here checking out Penn State for about an hour. And then the big watch party from USC at 3. Also, USC gets the spotlight on ESPN, but on the field at the same time is going to be the Pac-12 champion, Utah Utes, who I saw in a way too early top 25 listed as number 4 in the country. Wow. Which I believe leads me to a video series that we may hit on to basically reevaluate all the teams and say, you know, there's been so much activity now that we've got the transfer portal with, I saw a number of players in the transfer portal that I believe, oh shoot, I don't want to recite the number because I forgot it. It was mind-boggling how many players have been in the transfer portal since the end of last season. So these teams look somewhat different than they did, losing players to the NFL draft, losing players through the transfer portal, gaining players through the portal, and of course, whatever the impact of the 2022 recruiting class is going to be. So maybe that's a series for me to basically say, hey, this was Georgia football when they won the national championship the last time we saw them. But this is Georgia football and personnel right now. Are they better? Are they worse? What are they? Colorado and Colorado State hold their spring games at the same time. That's interesting. Marshall as well. USC, as we mentioned, will be here live with USC spring practice watch party. Oklahoma at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. And again, we will do our Oklahoma post game with Jason Ray from Last Word on College Football right here live at 8:30 approx on Saturday night. Virginia, Oregon. How about Texas? We just cut a Texas segment with our guy Matthew Miller. Check that out over on the Texas channel. We did a Texas spring game preview and Ajay Hall, the Alabama transfer, coming in as well, and possibly Caleb Williams, the UCLA linebacker, going to Texas. Possibly. He's got his list down to Texas and Miami. So as I see it with the teams that we're highlighting on Saturday, first and foremost, Penn State, and one of the more maligned quarterbacks in college football, Sean Clifford, doesn't deserve most of the pain and criticism that he receives. Sean Clifford minus a running game. Penn State's biggest issue this season is going to be basically mounting a running game. They had a non-existent running game. Sean Clifford's got to be supported with a running game. Fortunately for him and the Penn State offense and James Franklin, he can run. He's a good quarterback, mobile quarterback. And Sean Clifford, Penn State, they lose a ton on defense. I believe that Penn State had one of the better defenses in the country, one of the more talented defenses in the country last year. And they bring back a semblance of that, but they lose key contributors to the NFL. So Penn State at 2:00 on Saturday. USC, Caleb Williams, we'll get to see that outfit again. And we're going to focus our day on Penn State, USC, West Virginia, and Oklahoma. All right, good to see all of you. Again, the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. So one more time on the bottom ticker, Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV there at Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. And let's switch it out with a call-in number at 860-499-3332. Just wrapped up a session with the Wholesome One on the Miami channel. Check that out, as Miami has picked up a big transfer portal addition today in defensive lineman Akeem Mesidor from West Virginia. And they're looking to reel in Caleb Williams, the UCLA linebacker, who is looking right now at Texas and Miami. And the big addition to the transfer portal today was also Arizona State linebacker Eric Gentry, who's a Philadelphia native. All right, let's get things kicked off right here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? The real MVP, as is customary with our first caller. Uh-oh. Man, this does this to me from time to time. Let me see if this works.
To.
Let's see the spring games tomorrow. Well, for obvious reasons, USC, I'm going to take that entire game in, practice in. But as I explained on one of our shows the other day, I typically am kind of an oddball when it comes to some things like this, where some lesser teams interest me more so than the obvious headliners. So tomorrow, yes, I'm going to be focused on USC, and we're going to do a watch party on USC. I would really want to see Texas. I want to see Quinn Ewers throw the ball and Hudson Card. And there you've got a true quarterback competition, unlike just about everybody else on the board, except maybe Oregon. But Bo Nix will probably win that job. So the true quarterback competition, where right now it's 50-50, Quinn Ewers and Hudson Card at Texas. So I would, if I could only see one, that would be the one.
Okay, and USC for their spring game, they're allowing anybody to attend for free.
Oh, okay.
What do you think? Yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it's smart. It's smart for a few reasons. Number one, USC's been off the map in LA for a long, long time. A long, long time in in sports terms, 4 or 5 years, long time since they went to the Rose Bowl, won the Pac-12 championship. New coach, why not invite people, make it easy on them, be welcoming to say, hey, let's reintroduce you to USC football. It's different. It's not what it was last year or the year before. We've got a brand name coach. We want you to embrace USC football. Welcome in. Let's do this. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people, as you well know, can't go to college football games. They're too expensive. They're not going to pay.
Yeah, especially in Los Angeles, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, I can't imagine. On one hand, I would think that the USC games were expensive. On the other hand, I would think, well, they've had like 35,000 people show up in a 90,000 seat stadium for the last 5 years, so maybe they're not so expensive. But I know the only ticket I've ever purchased in my life for a college football game was at Ohio State. So the last time I was there, I took my kids about, when was that? 3 or 4 years ago. And the tickets were like $95, something like that. So yeah, not everybody can lay down $300 plus travel and food and anything else you want to do. It's a mini vacation. You know, you show up there with your wife and a couple of kids, and you're talking about spending $500 or $600. So not everyone can do that for a spring game. And I was making this point a couple weeks ago when we were talking about the Oklahoma spring game. I'd make it free. You know, what are you sacrificing at USC, Ohio State, fill in the blank? Yeah, you're coughing up a couple $100,000, but you know what? As a goodwill gesture to your fans that can't afford to go to a game or may not be able to just get tickets. If, again, we're not talking USC where there's 60,000 empty seats, but if it's Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, may not be able to get tickets, period. Goodwill gesture. It's free. Come enjoy. And then my last point on the free portion of that is, okay, a ton of these games are on television, but they're on the Big Ten Network and the ACC and the SEC, and that's a big deal. But this is on ESPN. More people are going to watch this spring game than any spring game. Wouldn't you want to have people in the stands, as many as possible?
Right, optics and free publicity from the spring game, I think, is going to outweigh the cost of making it free anyway. But have you seen the odds that have released for week 1? Some early football odds?
I have not.
Well, Caesars, this is provided to me by Caesars Sportsbook, so credit to them. They've listed 6 games I've got for you, Mark, okay? Now, I don't want a prediction because that's for your Patreon members, but which, by the way, you can sign up for $5 a month. But I just want a general reaction, if that's okay.
Sure.
So the first game is Clemson is a 21.5-point favorite at Georgia Tech.
I think through 2 seasons that Jeff Collins is doing just about as bad a job as any coach in the country. And now he may change my mind, but I'm just judging him on the 2 seasons in Atlanta, and it's not pretty. It's ugly. And 21 points, man, Clemson's defense or their offense has struggled so much, and I didn't see anything that would cause me to believe that they're going to be much better this season, at least at this point. 21. I don't think the home field matters. 21.5. That's a big deal. That's a good thing that you pointed that out, because the half point when the point spread is on the 7s, for anybody out there that wants to know this, and I'm no betting expert, but this is one of the tenets. That's about a 3 to 5% play right there. Like, meaning over the course of time, you're going to win or lose an additional 3-5 roughly percent more or less, because that point spread's on the half. If it's 7.5, 14.5, 21.5. Take Clemson.
Georgia is a 15-point favorite against Oregon.
I'm going to spit out some scores for you just to make it a little more fun for me. So I'm going to go Clemson wins that game. Right now, I'm looking at 34-10. All right. Now we've got at the Georgia Dome, or whatever they call it now. Georgia, basically neutral site, but they're at home taking on Oregon, 15.5.
No, just 15.
15. Okay, 15. And Oregon fans are going to be awfully upset with me because I made a similar statement during one of their live streams when that was brought to the table. This game has 38-14 written all over it.
Okay. Ohio State is 13-point favorites against Notre Dame.
Buckeyes win this game 38-28.
Cool. Okay. Arkansas is 8.5-point favorites against Cincinnati.
Oh, man, I really want to see that game. Arkansas and Cincinnati, I'm trying to figure out who would cover that game, where that game's going to be. It's probably going to be, I guess, an ESPN game. Arkansas and Cincinnati. What was the line? 8.5 at Arkansas, right?
That is correct.
I like the Hogs in this one. Let's go 34-21.
Okay. LSU is a 4-point favorite against Florida State.
LSU and Florida State. Yeah. Now, Florida State will have played a game, which should help them theoretically. LSU, and they're at the Superdome, I believe.
That is correct. So it's neutral site in quotes.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, once again, the point spread?
4.
LSU 34-27.
And the final one, Florida is a 1-point favorite against Utah.
At Florida. Utah goes in there and wins 27-23.
Okay.
Bam.
And that's all the games I've got.
Like that.
But
that was fun.
National championship. They put national championship odds out as well.
All right.
There's a gap between 3 and then everybody else. But I'll give you top 6 because 6 is interesting to me.
All right.
So Alabama's the favorite, then Georgia, then Ohio State, then Clemson, then Texas A&M, and finally USC.
USC's not winning any national championship this year. It could be 1,000,000 to 1. Well, I'd put $1 on it or something, but yeah, that's not going to happen. There should be other teams ahead of USC. I don't know if they're just baiting people to bet.
Well, what do you think about Texas A&M at 5? The 5th best odds to win the title out of anybody in the country. That's also interesting to me.
Well, there's an obvious barrier or challenge there between Alabama, Texas A&M, and Georgia, and that's obvious. They knock heads, so they cut each other off, being in the same conference. But at the same time, you got to figure one of those 3, at least one of those 3 are going to be in the playoffs, and maybe 2 out of 3. So the odds are like 90-some% that one of those 3 is going to be in the playoffs. And the odds are, I know that because of what happened last year, and it's happened one other time, that there's a thought that, okay, the SEC is going to get 2, and it could quite possibly happen again. But I'd say the odds are slightly against it, but that's the league that's going to get 2 if there is one. So you can look at it that way, or you can just look at the Clemson situation or the Ohio State situation and say, well, they're the king of the league. So what should their odds be? So for that reason, I think they might be a little bit heavy on Texas A&M. Like, I wouldn't think that it would be worth throwing $100 out there to win. What are you going to win? 6,000?
2,500.
Oh, you're going to win $2,500 off of $100. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of faith. I'm going to be surprised. I'll say this as we sit here in mid-April, 4.5 months away from play. I'm going to be surprised if anybody wins the national championship who is not named Alabama, Georgia, or Ohio State. That's like if we knew that right now, the real MVP, that USC won the national championship, Texas A&M won the national championship, Clemson, Oklahoma, somebody else, wouldn't you be somewhat surprised that it wasn't one of those three?
Yeah.
Now, getting to the playoffs, another thing, but now you got to beat two, like USC winning the national championship. Now, if you said getting to the playoff, I'd still say that's a stretch, but I can see it happening. Lincoln Riley, really good quarterback. They've done a lot. Weak conference. They can get to 12-1. Sure, they get to a playoff, but when they get to that playoff and they're staring at going through Ohio State and Georgia, or Alabama and Georgia, or Clemson and Georgia, or whatever, yeah, that's tougher than their entire season put together. The other 13 games.
That's not happening.
No,
but if somebody believes it, they're plus 3,500 right now.
And USC fans are going to have a heyday with me if they somehow would win a national championship this year and clip this off and laugh at me for until the end of time. But Lincoln Riley, did he get close to winning he got close to winning one playoff game at Oklahoma, and he got smashed 3 times. And that was at Oklahoma with an established program.
Well, Mark, I don't make the odds. I'm just giving you the information about it.
Yes. This is almost like the FBI. I appreciate you bringing this up. This is almost like the FBI that I can just sit here and bash.
They're above Oklahoma, Michigan, Utah, and Notre Dame, which I believe all of those teams, I would argue, have a better chance of making the playoffs than USC this year. Because while some of those teams like Michigan's hard for me to see them making it, but if they beat Ohio State again, then they're probably going to make the playoffs. But USC, with that schedule they got, I just don't see it happening. I don't see them beating Notre Dame. But that's all I got for you, Mark.
I like it. That was fun. Yeah. Looking at the week 1 games, got my juices flowing a little bit, thinking about seeing those teams play, because aside from Clemson and Georgia Tech, I don't know why they get included with those other games, but that's fine. Those other games should be, intriguing, interesting, if not close.
Well, I will talk to you next time.
Appreciate it. Have a good night. And before we take our next call, did get the reminder there about Discord. Of course, we've got Discord. So what's going on in the chat right now goes on all the time, or, to be perfectly honest, can go on all the time on Discord. We've got about 55 people there, $5 a month. So keep in mind, along with Discord, you get my predictions during the season. You get now added on to that on Patreon. So Patreon and the Discord kind of come hand in hand. So sign up on Patreon and search Mark Rogers TV on Patreon. You can sign up there. I get you the link to jump on Discord. And shoot, you can talk to Tim and Eric. If nothing else, you can talk to Tim and Eric and Ronan and a whole lot of other good folks. And I check in every day as well to see what's on the chat. And in addition to that, sign up on Patreon and you can make your request for schedule previews. All right, let's take our next call. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Bash.
Bash. My goodness, where have you been?
You know, life gets in the way sometimes. I mean, it just happens. I try my best to keep up with you and Uncle Lou and other creators that are here. A nice little shout out to Uncle Lou, who's also live right now. So it's just hard sometimes. The schedule gets in the way.
Sure. It's good to hear from you.
But I'm here. How are you been? How have you been?
I've been doing well. I've been doing great. I got to think that the last time I talked to you, I had to go to work every day, and now I don't. So, absolutely.
You know, I don't know if that's actually the case. I think I did call in a couple times during the season, but
okay.
Yeah, just sometimes life gets in the way. I try to, catch up and replays and stuff. I don't comment too much after the fact. I'm basically only a live chat person, so that's kind of how it goes. But anyway, let's get to the football. First off, this isn't what I talked or called about, but something just came to my mind. I don't get why there's this general assumption that Clemson's just going to get it all together. They lose Tony Elliott. They lose Brent Venables, who's probably the greatest defensive coordinator in the last decade. How the heck is there a general assumption? I'm not saying that it's not possible, but why does everybody just assume Clemson's going to be back in the thick of the playoffs? When you do have a Pittsburgh team that brings back the Biletnikoff Award winner, a pretty solid quarterback in Keaton Slovis, NC State loses some but returns a lot. And Wake Forest also returns a lot, dipped into the transfer portal a little bit. I know they lost Christian Beal-Smith, but we'll see how much that affects them. So go ahead and answer that for me. Why do people just assume Clemson is going to be back into the playoff?
So, Bash, I don't know who you're talking to. The feedback that I get is that everything I see from a media outlet, everything I see that comes from Vegas seems to assume exactly what you're saying. So when I see the way too early top 25 lists, whether they come from ESPN or wherever, I see Clemson number 3, number 4. I see them back right there in the running for a national championship. When I see the odds that were just read to us out of Vegas, Clemson, number 3, number 4, they're right in that range. But when I hear from people, the people that at least talk to me and leave comments on the channel, they think I tend to think it's almost an automatic thought the other direction, that they think Clemson's in decline. They went 10-3 last year. They're in decline. Like they make that one season out to be like 5 seasons. And I read the viewer comments the complete opposite, that they've written Clemson off as no longer being Clemson of 2015 through 20. I see it somewhere in between. I see a Clemson defense that's arguably going to be the best in the country. I still think it's going to be Alabama, Georgia, but Clemson's going to have a top 3 to 4 defense in the country. And they still play in a weak conference, although NC State will have something to say about Clemson advancing to a conference championship game. But the quarterback position is so sketchy. Their best quarterback's a true freshman. Now, I don't know if he's going to be the best quarterback this season, but I've seen enough of Uiagalelei that I don't know what went wrong with him last year, but who throws more interceptions than touchdown passes in these days? Nobody.
Right.
And he does. And he did, and he looked bad at the spring game. So, and it's not all on him. It's mediocre offensive line play and wide receiver play that's nowhere close to a Clemson standard of DeAndre Hopkins and Martavis Bryant and Artavis Scott and Mike Williams and all those guys. I don't know what's happened at the wide receiver position. Those guys aren't anywhere close to the Clemson standard, and the offensive line and then the quarterback put that all together. And it's an offense that was struggling to score, 20, 24 points against the BCs of the world last year.
Right, and the only player who really did live up to the standard was true freshman Will Shipley last year. Everybody else just kind of underachieved, and I kind of saw that because it seemed like Clemson had like their starting 4 or 5 wide receivers were just carbon copies of one another. You know, Frank Ladson and Justin Ross and you know, others that might be slipping my mind right now. But I don't want to like beat this drum of Clemson too much. The last thing I'm going to say about it is Trent Dilfer just absolutely went after Brandon Streeter, saying that he really doesn't develop quarterbacks very well. In fact, they regress under Streeter. Even Lawrence regressed under Streeter. And he was just talented enough to overcome that and still be the number 1 overall pick. But like the word around the Jacksonville Jaguars, you know, organization, which you can take that word as much as you with a grain of salt because, you know, the Jaguars. But they were just talking about how Trevor Lawrence's mechanics were all out of whack and just kind of like goofy, and like he had talent, but it was just not you saw him as a freshman versus as a junior, and it just seemed like it was a lot smoother as a freshman. So I don't know. Another thing I want to mention here, Kansas State to me is kind of a sleeper team to compete for a Big 12 title berth. They have a pretty decently experienced defense in general as a whole. You know, they're going to have a little bit of a problem at safety. Apparently, Sean Robinson, remember him?
Oh, yeah.
He's apparently supposed to start at safety for them, which beats me. I mean, I don't fully know if he's really all that good, but you know, if Adrian Martinez really ends up if we see more of the good parts that we saw in Adrian Martinez and he could kind of control his game a little bit more than he did at Nebraska, if Chris Kleiman and his staff can calm him down, you got Deuce Vaughn, you got Malik Knowles, this team could possibly be a sleeper to go to the Big 12 championship when the Big 12 might be down this year because Texas is still a year away, in my opinion. Oklahoma, I think, is going to have a bit of a transition year under Brent Venables. And then Baylor's going to be pretty solid. I don't know if Oklahoma State's going to be as good as they were last year. What are your thoughts on Kansas State if you really have broken them down too much?
Well, I haven't looked at them that much. When you bring up Adrian Martinez, the thought is, okay, we're going to find out, or at least get a strong indication as to whether Adrian Martinez's issues are Adrian Martinez or are they coaching. So we know that probably 80 to 90% of the time that Adrian Martinez's productivity was good enough to be a top tier quarterback, not elite, but a top 3 or 4 Big Ten quarterback, something in that range.
Yeah.
But he always made crucial mistakes. If you look at his turnover rate, it's way too high. It was ever since he stepped on the field for the first time. But even more so than the turnover rate was the timing of the turnovers. You know, he threw an interception in overtime against Michigan State. Nebraska's about to upset a top 10 team in the nation. Their defense pitched a shutout. And when I say shutout, a shutout in the second half of first downs. Didn't even give up a first down in the second half. And Adrian Martinez throws a pick to end the game. They're playing Illinois. It's week 1 of the season, week 0, and he gets strip sacked to end the game when they're trying to drive to score to tie the game. You know, this is just over and over. There's an Iowa game the year before. Yeah, they're driving for the go-ahead touchdown, strip sack. So we'll see if this is Adrian Martinez or if this is coaching. And so that's going to be interesting to see if the change of setting and coaching helps him out. In regards to Kansas State and Chris Kleiman, otherwise, they played competitive football in the Big 12 last year. And again, I haven't really looked. Deuce Vaughn's coming back as one of the better backs in the nation, really explosive player. And they were as good as anybody after the top 3 in the Big 12 last season. I do think that JT Daniels makes a difference at West Virginia. Maybe not to the extent of winning a conference championship, but they go from like a bottom 3 quarterback room in the conference to a top 2 or 3 quarterback room in the conference.
I wouldn't go that far.
What's that?
Well, I mean, it depends on what you're talking about with the quarterback room. Are you talking about proven commodities, or are you talking about upside and talent? Because, I mean, you're looking at Dylan Gabriel possibly there. You're looking at what Spencer Sanders could possibly bring to the table, what Quinn Ewers could bring, and then, of course, Adrian Martinez when it comes to upside. So it really depends. I don't feel like JT Daniels' upside is fully there, but I kind of, especially with the weapons he's going to be thrown to, might be lacking a little bit. And so I don't really know if they're going to be top 2 or 3 when it comes to quarterback room. Probably top half, probably top 5.
Well, when I rate a quarterback, I'm not talking about who he's throwing to. So their wide receiver plays a whole other situation. But what JT Daniels can do as a quarterback, I think he's a top 15 quarterback in the country, something in that range. And Spencer Sanders, put him in the same category as Adrian Martinez to a certain extent. He's played so much football. We know exactly what Spencer Sanders is. The difference is he's playing for the same coaching staff and the same team. So for him to flip the switch and be a guy that's going to be reliable, I can't expect that after playing like he's probably had 35 starts, and he's a guy that's going to complete a low percentage of his passes, scatter shot guy that will make dynamic plays. He's hit or miss. So what they try to do is protect him, and not physically, but protect him in play calling, because they've had a defense, especially this past season, that was lights out, one of the top 5 to 10 in the country. And that's what got them to the Big 12 championship game. Don't let Spencer Sanders screw it up.
Yeah. I mean, he's definitely botched it. And I'm not saying that Spencer Sanders is anything special. As an athlete, like, he's a really good athlete.
Oh, sure he is.
Be better. And I think entering 2019, he had so much hype going into it, and I kind of bought into it. I'm not buying into it anymore. You did kind of see it with Kenny Pickett, but like, Kenny Pickett's so rare. I don't know if Spencer Sanders is going to be Kenny Pickett. And what you said about Adrian Martinez kind of reminds me a little bit of Spencer Rattler's situation too over at South Carolina, about how, like, you know, because it seems like he was throwing a high percentage of his passes. I believe he completed close to 75% of his passes, which is really good on the surface, but he made so many boneheaded mistakes and just tried to get everything all at once. And I'm curious if there was just a lot of pressure on him from inside. Caleb Williams was applying pressure, and he wanted to try to do too much. And I feel like maybe getting out of that situation and competing with Luke Doty instead of Caleb Williams might help him out a little bit. I was impressed with him in the spring game. Now, again, spring game, take it with a grain of salt. I've always been impressed with his talent. I've never been impressed with his mentality, if you know what I mean.
Spencer Sanders. Where am I going with that? Anyway, Spencer Rattler, he can throw the football much better than Adrian Martinez can. So Adrian Martinez,
right?
Yeah, he's. I don't know necessarily that he's got that much stronger of an arm, but he's got more arm talent. So anyway, yeah, he won the job as a true freshman, and they lost 2 of their first 4 games. He made mistakes at the wrong times, but shoot, he was a true freshman. And then he put it in overdrive, played really well down the stretch that season, 2020. They won the Big 12 and the Cotton Bowl. Then he comes back last season, and we now know that at one point early in the season, Lincoln Riley was talking to USC and was starting to not necessarily be the most focused head coach. Now, how much that had to do with Spencer Rattler, we'll never know. But we know that the fans got the expectation for Oklahoma going into last season was this team's going to go undefeated. They're going to win a national championship, and they're going to score 50 points a game like they did under their previous quarterbacks. And Spencer Rattler didn't help that. He didn't deliver. He also was hurt by the worst offensive line that Oklahoma's had in quite some time, and just didn't have the support that that he needed. I'm not saying that he played well, but he didn't play poorly. And of course, he gave up the starting assignment to Caleb Williams during the Texas game, who led that tremendous comeback. And so he obviously was going to be this quarterback the rest of the year. But I think Spencer Rattler to South Carolina, my goodness, I can only imagine. Shane Beamer, he nursed that team to a 7-6 record with 4 I'm going to be kind, marginal quarterbacks, like third string quarterbacks, like second and third string quarterback. I don't even know if those guys are second string quarterbacks at most SEC schools. And now he's got a legitimate quarterback.
Right. I agree with you 100%.
A really tough schedule,
like,
but a legitimate quarterback.
Yeah. And, you know, I think it does help that they're in the East. I truly think that Tennessee's kind of a little bit overvalued. They could definitely compete in that game. And, you know, Kentucky is not, they're well coached, but they're not flooded with talent. And so basically, like, when you're talking about the East, they do get the crosses with A&M, and I can't remember for the life of me who the second crossover was for Carolina.
They're going to play Arkansas.
Arkansas. Okay, yeah, those are 2 really tough crossovers. But I was about to say, like, pretty much anybody you're going to get in the West. I think 1 through 6 is really good, and Auburn's kind of average. Like, I even think Mississippi State's a pretty good team.
Sure.
But their schedule is not as tough as maybe some would think. And, you know, it depends on how this Rattler situation goes. 7-5 would be a slight improvement. 7-5, 8-4 is kind of where I see them going. And if they can do that, then this Rattler experiment has kind of worked in theory.
You brought up Tennessee. I think the reason why people are high on Tennessee is that anytime there's a situation where somebody's down, a team's down, that if you've got some age on you, you're used to being a good program, and then somebody comes in as a new head coach, especially when they're an offensive-minded head coach and they bring life to that program and they pump some life into it, then there's an expectation that they're just going to continue this upward ascent. And that's a big assumption, because to go from a 3 or 4 win team in an SEC to a 7-win team, that's a great improvement. That's a great job by the head coach, but you're beating teams on your level to do that, or maybe even below you. But then to jump from 7 to 9, that takes, you know, to pick off 2 other teams on an SEC schedule, that's a leap, because now you're looking at, oh, we got to pick off somebody like Kentucky, or, you know, fill in the blank.
And I do like what they did in the transfer portal. I really like what Shane Beamer is doing there. So, I mean, I could talk about all 130 teams in FBS, or at the very least everybody in the Power 5, but I think I talked about plenty of programs and plenty of players for today. So I'll let you get to the next player. I'll keep listening on YouTube. So
we appreciate it, Bash.
Next person.
Thank you so much. You have a great night.
Have a great one. You too.
All right. Now let's get to our next caller here at the Voice of College Football.
To the man that gives college football its voice, the great Mark Rogers. Hi, and how are you, sir?
David, I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent. I wanted to talk a little bit of Buckeyes, and then, of course, talk a little bit of college football at large with you here. I will say that, you know, again, with this team this year, did you get a chance to watch the full spring game, by the way? Oh, that's right. You did the live stream during the spring game, right? Okay. I will say I'm somewhat optimistic that this defense is going to be better this year, as I may have illustrated to you in the past. I just think, again, there's too much defensive line talent for it to not be improved. And obviously it's got nowhere to go but up. And I actually feel through recruiting that the linebacker level has improved. I'm convinced the secondary is going to be decent, but again, even though I don't know if there's that ultimate difference maker on the defensive line, I just think collectively I think it can be a pretty good unit.
That defensive line.
The same way.
Well, I think the defensive line, you know, I'll try to take my fandom out of it and just say to have the desire to see an elite defensive line a la Clemson in 2018, Georgia 2021. if they
Right.
they don't need to fully reach their potential and all become monsters, but they have so much, especially edge rush talent, that
Right.
they could just be, and I think that's, to me, the number one key. That is the number one key for me. There are others, but to them completing what Ohio State fans would hope for this season, and going from a 2-loss team to either a 1-loss team that goes all the way through and wins a national championship or goes undefeated. Um, it's that pass rush, and it's the defensive line play as a whole.
Yeah, obviously, the ideal situation in football is to get pressure with your front four and not have to blitz.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying that they're necessarily going to have an alpha on that defensive line with the likes of a Boza or a Young, like the generational guys. But again, I think it can be, collectively as a unit, as good of just a really good group is basically what I'm thinking. And I think the other thing too is they've got pretty good depth, so they can rotate ends and they can rotate defensive tackles. So I think that's going to help too, because you can never have enough depth on the defensive line. And just bottom line, Mark, I don't know what your thoughts are. Are you just, kind of hearkening back to 2020 Alabama and 2019, LSU. Those were great offenses. Now, those were all-time great offenses. But, they didn't necessarily need to be the 85 Bears on defense, considering how good their offenses were.
True. And, this could be the same type formula. Now, I will say that LSU, as they progress throughout the season, and Alabama, as they progress through the season, really improved on that side of the ball. And, of course, they were loaded with talent.
True.
Now, Texas put up yards and points against LSU week 1. I'm trying to think who else. Tua and that Alabama offense, that shouldn't be a surprise. They put up 41, but they only had 13 at half. LSU played really well to give them a 3-touchdown lead. And really everybody else, they held in check. Georgia scored 10 points in the SEC championship game. Oklahoma, basically, any points they scored were inconsequential, because I know they scored 28, but they didn't matter. It was a 5-touchdown game at halftime. Like, the LSU defense, after a couple weeks early in the season, they improved tremendously. Now, the Alabama defense just got shredded by Ole Miss in about week 3 or 4. 48 points, could have been worse than that, like 600 yards. Now, their only letdown after that was Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, that team, Florida. But again, it was from playing with a decent lead. They didn't run away from them. The game was like on the edge of being in contention. They typically had a couple touchdown lead in that game, and they gave up 46 points, I think, 44, 46, whatever it was. So, but then in the playoffs, sure, Ohio State had a pretty good first half on offense, but that's about what it was. And, of course, Notre Dame did nothing.
Well, that actually, I said, I think after that game, Mark, the one disappointment with me, I guess I was really disappointed we gave up 52 points, but I thought we were going to score a lot more than 24, especially with the game that Fields was just coming off of in that game. And we may have left a few points out there, but, because I thought that we were going to be, I thought Fields could do what Trask did against him, bottom line, because Fields is a better quarterback than Trask.
Yep.
So,
well, Trey Sermon, first play of the game. Wyatt Davis, sometime in the second quarter, out. And they got ripped off a touchdown in that game, didn't they? Didn't the officials miss a catch in bounds?
Yeah, Olave would have caught, I think, would have been more or less a meaningless touchdown. Ohio State would have had 31 points instead of 24 points.
Yeah.
But it was, the game was inevitable at that point. But, yeah, they probably did, long and short of it. But, because, just from an offensive perspective, the other reason I don't think that their defense is going to be, have to be real top notch is I believe they're going to have the best quarterback this year. I believe they're going to have the best wide receiver. And I think they're going to have one of the top 5 running backs at the very least, maybe one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in the country, in Henderson.
Well, I would agree. And his backups can play too.
Yeah, they have depth at receiver and depth at running back. The only thing I'll say about that offense is if they sustain an injury on the offensive line, that could be concerning because the recruiting, the last offensive line coach had some misses on offensive line recruiting, and that's why he's gone. But yeah, they could use a little bit of depth there. So if they sustain an injury or two, that's something that could hurt them. So that would be the one thing I would keep an eye on. I wanted to ask you about college football at large, Mark. We were talking about that top 10 that was put out by ESPN. That we talked about the last time. I believe was that an FPI or something like that?
Yes, the FPI. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. My question for you is: did you think Georgia at 3 might be a little bit too high? I mean, I know there's a defending national champion, but that's a boatload of defensive talent that they lost.
No.
Okay.
I don't.
I mean, maybe you're right. I'm just saying. Okay.
What was my way too early top 25? I think I had them number 2.
Okay. I mean, how many? I mean, I know that Kirby recruits at a top 2 level in the country. I mean, I get it, but I mean that was a generational type defense last year, and they lost how many starters off that defense, Mark?
My guess is I actually just did a personnel breakdown on Georgia. It's about 6 to 7.
And I know Jordan Davis. I know Walker, the other defensive player that they lost. I believe they lost their best linebacker, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, N'Kobe Dean's gone. Darion Kendrick, their best
Right.
corner's gone. Their best safety, Lewis Seen's gone. Yeah, Wyatt Davis, he's on the brain now. Jordan Davis, and then his running mate, who actually I thought played better than Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt. Their 2 just mountains in the middle are gone. Yeah, they lose a lot. Let me put it to you this way, though. If you consider Ohio State to be the best offense in the country and to have a defense that's, well, kind of a guessing game, how good are they going to be? Yeah. They can't be any worse with that talent and with that coordinator. And when I say that their defensive line to me is the number 1 key to them winning a national championship, it's not the normal response to this is the key to this team winning a national championship. It's not because it's a weakness. It's because they can pretty much roll their helmets out and they're going to be good, but are they going to be great and erase a lot of issues? Even if the linebackers in the secondary improves, just to have that, as you mentioned, a devastating pass rush and just blowing up plays. To watch Georgia play Clemson and Arkansas early last season, that's when it just hit me in the face that, wow, this defense is something different. They're special. They just didn't allow the offense to run most of their plays. So
right.
My point here is if we get back to Ohio State being, let's say, the best offense in the country and if they fulfill their potential, shoot, they could be a top 10 defense, but let's say it's more reasonable that they're a top 30 to 40 defense.
Okay. I was going to say top 20, but okay.
Okay. Georgia. And when I say top 30 or 40, I don't mean statistically. I don't think that, I mean that they are, with everything taken into consideration, that they're legitimately a top 20 defense or 30 or 40 defense. Anyway, so Georgia, I am more certain that Georgia is going to be a top level offense, not to the degree of Ohio State, but they're going to be a top 10 to 15 offense, and
Wow.
that their defense, they're loaded on offense. That not to the degree of Ohio State, but pretty darn close. And that their defense is more of a certainty, even with losing all those guys, that I'm more certain that Georgia's going to be elite than Ohio State's going to be elite, because that defense has not been good for 4 or 5 years to the level that we expected. So I'm more sure about Georgia than I am Ohio State.
So you're saying Georgia offensively, from an offensive, so you're expecting what, Stetson Bennett, and I believe they have their tight end back this year, correct? Bowers.
They've got 3 tight ends that are going to play in the NFL. They might have 4 tight ends that are going to play in the NFL, and they will supplement their wide receivers with Brock Bowers, Eric Gilbert, and Darnell Washington. They've got 3 studs at tight end, and 2 of them are like receivers. They can play wide receiver, basically.
They have Cook and the other running back too, Mark?
James Cook is gone. Zamir White's gone. They're two.
Okay, so
they're
Cook
2
and White
leading rushers. I wouldn't consider them to be the 2 best rushers, but they were the guys that had the seniority and got the carries. But they're loaded at running back with Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton. This Kendall Milton's a stud. They're going to field a top 5 offensive line in the country, and they've got the best tight end in the country, and they've got 2 clones of him. And then their receivers, they just have waves of great receivers. When I say great receivers, let me back up. Great talent at receiver. They haven't proven it, but the couple guys that were making plays down the stretch, like Adonis Mitchell and I can't think of his name. Anyway, Dominic Blaylock, he tore an ACL last year. Anyway, they've got a handful of guys that prove to be capable in pressure games that are all coming back.
So
I just think
are you expecting
I can't name 10 or 15 offenses in the country that are going to be better than Georgia. Who are they?
Okay.
Can you think of
the Kirby Smart teams?
Can you think of 10 or 15 offenses that are going to be better than Georgia's?
Off the top of my head, probably not. But, I mean, Georgia's offenses are always seem to be, I wouldn't say pedestrian, but a lot of times Georgia is winning because of their defense and they're running the ball. From what it sounds like you're saying, they're going to be what, more open this year? And are you expecting Bennett to have a pretty good year at quarterback?
Well, I do think that there's an argument to be made for what can happen to a quarterback when he experiences and prevails in the type situation that Stetson Bennett did. You know, you're talking about a guy that wrestled with the quarterback job, you know, would win it, lose it, back and forth, always looking over his shoulder, never considered to be the guy, always, well, we just have to kind of play him because he's experienced and he's going to, I guess, get the job done, but we'd rather have JT Daniels in there. And before that, a host of other players. And so he always was just on the cusp of losing his job. And then he wins a national championship. And in the manner that he won a national championship, he's the man. It's his team. That doesn't make his skills any better other than him working on them. And he doesn't have a high ceiling. He's going to be the same Stetson Bennett. But man, when you are down by a score against Alabama and you just got strip sacked for a touchdown or whatever the play was, the ball rolled out of bounds. It was basically a strip sack for a touchdown. They got the ball at the 5 and Alabama scored the next play. And you know, every camera's on you and it looks like you've blown the national championship game. And he comes back from that and leads the drive and throws some lasers to bring them ahead. I just think that can just lift somebody to a whole different level of what can I face now that I haven't seen before and overcome.
Okay. So, he had big throws in that game, and I concur. But from what it sounds like, you're saying that he's going to parlay that into like a big statistical season this year, is what I'm hearing.
Not necessarily. Nope.
Oh, okay.
No,
okay.
I think he'll throw, like what Stroud throw 44 touchdowns last year. I think, Stetson Bennett's going to throw, I think he threw 29 last year. There's nothing wrong with that. I think he has a similar season. I think he throws 32 TDs and throws 8 or 9 picks. He gets loose with the football a little bit, but that's plenty. They're still going to have one of the 5 best defenses in the country.
Okay. All right. I mean, I know that they recruited at the high level. I just thought with the 6-7 starters that they lost on defense that, maybe they take a little bit of a step back this year. But, from an offensive standpoint, you do make a good point. They do have some really good players back. Bennett throwing 32 touchdowns. I might take the under on that one, though, Mark. I would take the under. But,
I might too. I'm just throwing out numbers. I'm not making a wager. But the guy threw 29 last year. So whether he throws 27 or 32 or whatever it is, I just think it's like there's a number of times you may have heard me state this when we talk Buckeyes during our live show, and sometimes when people want us to grind through offensive stats, and Kevin Noon's really good at this, he'll go through his spreadsheet and say, well, in 2017, we averaged 520 yards of total offense, and then it went to 513, then it went to 4, and the whole deal. And I'll be like, and that's why I say, when I say Ohio State needs a top 20 defense, I'm not talking about at the end of the year. They might be 37th, but you know what? I didn't care that they got loose against Toledo and gave up, a couple touchdowns in the second half and gave up too many yards because they were up 52-14. I want to know, what are they doing against Penn State in Iowa and Notre Dame in Michigan? Right. And I want to know what Stetson Bennett's doing against Kentucky and Alabama if they play in a championship game, and whomever they've got crossover. It's Auburn and whomever they've got. And of course, they've got a non-conference game against Oregon to start the season. So same type narrative that, if Cade McNamara could get to a playoff throwing 15 touchdowns with a really good defense, but Georgia had Georgia's defense should be as good as Michigan's defense was last year, at least.
Okay.
They're just so stacked with talent.
Okay. I mean, I just thought possibly there could be a step back there, but maybe you're right. We'll see with Bennett this year. I did want to get to Texas real quick, Mark.
Okay.
I did notice that they were in the top 10 in that ranking, and I'm wondering if in your number 2 with Sark, if that's a little bit too much to ask for.
Oh my word! I don't see it, except for he just brought in a top 5 class, and he probably inherited technically one of the 10 or 12 best rosters in the country. And then they just added a top 5 receiver coming out of high school who played for Alabama last year, is Ajay Hall, who was a top 50 player. So they added him. They added Shane. No, he went to USC. I'm thinking of somebody
running back
else
in the country, Mark. Right?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Could be the best running back in the country there, right?
You're talking about Bijan Robinson. Sure. They might have the best running back in the country. I'm just thinking about some of the parts that they've added along with their top 5 recruiting class. They've had a nice run in the transfer portal. But man, I have no faith in Sark.
Wow. Okay.
I have little faith. What does the guy ever, like, when I say I have no faith, I have faith that he's a capable football coach, that he's a competent. What did I rank him? I ranked him like 48th in the country. Like what?
Well, do you know what I think of Sark, Mark? I just want to add this comment. Do you know how we say in the NFL there are certain guys that are just good coordinators, but they maybe not good coaches?
Sure.
Could that be the thing that we could apply to maybe a Sark or maybe even a Mullen or a Tom Herman or folks like that, that maybe their niche is just drawing up good game plans and being, innovative offensive minds and not necessarily being good head coaches?
Well, sure. And yeah, I think we're on the same page in regards to saying somebody's a good coach, meaning that they can win a national championship with the right resources and the right support. And Dan Mullen, he had a nice run at Mississippi State. He had 3 successful years at really, if Dan Mullen wasn't such a buffoon and did dumb things, he probably would still be at Florida,
Right.
because he just had one down season, and that down season was 6-6. It wasn't, 10 losses, but he was just playing for an SEC championship the year before. But yeah, to be that guy to lift a program to those heights. Yeah, I know that Sark can go 8-4 at Washington and USC and probably at Texas too, but that's not what he's being paid to do.
See, I wonder now that yours is there. That's going to be an interesting thing. Does he? Now he won't play this year. I doubt he won't be their starter this year. Will he?
Who? Quinn Ewers?
Wait till 23. Yeah,
He might be.
he might end up being their starter this year.
He's got a shot. Sure, he's in a quarterback battle.
Okay.
And I don't know.
I had not. Had they?
I don't know how to handicap that. He's playing against Hudson Card, who won the job over Casey Thompson coming out of camp, and then he lost the job when Thompson just played better, and he faltered against Arkansas. He lost the job, and then they kind of put him in there here and there, and he played, but he never regained the position. So, yeah, from what I understand, it's a let's throw them both out there and see who wins the job. Yeah, Hudson Card's no established starter, so
Yeah, I would be interested to see if he gets to play. I mean, obviously, all the hype around him, what he could bring to the table, especially, if they throw him in, early in the season this year and he ends up starting. I'd still like to see what he can do, especially maybe in Sark's offense, with him calling the plays.
well, absolutely. And I was asked that by our first caller, what spring game would I want to see above any others? And I'm a glutton for punishment. Like Gerdeman had asked me, how many spring games have you watched? And I start reeling them off. Well, I just DVR all of them, and then I don't necessarily get to all of them. But I said, I have an odd penchant for, having the Alabama and Georgia games on my DVR, but also having Duke and putting the Duke one on. Just curious. Nobody's going to ask me a question about Duke. I don't need to know anything about Duke, but I'm just curious. Anyway, so why did I bring that the real MVP asked me if you could see any game as soon as I reviewed the games and thought, okay, quarterback battle, that's going to be the one that's the most hotly contested out of everybody playing tomorrow.
Yeah, good luck with Sark in Texas, because you get Alabama early.
Oh, my word.
Good luck, and we're going to see how things go after that for you. So,
yeah.
Last thing I wanted to get to, Mark.
Well, just to your point, David, that either Hudson Card's going to win that job, and unless he improves tremendously, he was a decent average quarterback last year. So either he starts against Alabama, or you're starting a basically true freshman. I know he's not. He snuck in the door at Ohio State, but a player that's never played before, who's going to get one warm-up game, then he's going to see Alabama week 2. Quinn Ewers. Wow.
Yeah, we're going to get to see how far Texas is along. If there ever's a measuring stick, that's going to be a good way to find out. Last thing, Mark, I follow the NFL draft, and I've been paying attention to this kind of being a weak quarterback class compared to years past. But there's been a lot of talk of Malik Willis. I've just seen some of the highlights. Did you get a chance to see him play last year in too many games?
I did not see him play. I did watch him at the combine. And I've heard a lot of commentators, NFL guys, say that he's the most talented. He's got the most upside of any quarterback in the draft.
Yeah, but Mark, isn't that like being named the valedictorian of summer school? I mean, it doesn't necessarily carry with it a whole lot of merit. You know what I mean? Everybody's saying that this is not necessarily a quarterback class to write home about. I don't know if you're hearing the same thing.
Oh, yeah, it's not. And I agree with that. Not that I've dissected it, because for as much as I love the NFL and love the draft, I just don't have time to grind it down like that. But I don't think it's a good quarterback class at all. I don't know when the last time there weren't 1, 2, 3 guys that were highly coveted as, okay, these are franchise potential quarterbacks. Those guys don't exist,
right.
I don't think.
Yeah, like I saw Kenny Pickett play. I think he's pretty good.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I don't see like a guy that I'm going to say, well, that guy could be a generational guy. Or that guy for sure could be a franchise starting quarterback.
No. Well, we've seen a lot of guys, of course, Tom Brady being the poster child, rise from the ashes
Sure.
and maximize their skills and all that. So I wouldn't be surprised if like a Kenny Pickett would turn out to be Joe Flacco and have a really good career. But there aren't guys that I look at and say, I would put my money on this guy being, a multiple time playoff starter, guy that just holds down a franchise for 10 years. I wouldn't put my money on any of them.
I hear you. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to talk football, college or pro, with the man that gives college football its voice. You have a good one, Mark.
David, thank you so much. Have a good night. It's our guy, David, Buckeyes fan, joins us for the Buckeyes live show every Wednesday. So that's every Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern time on our Buckeyes channel. So somebody commented, and then somebody else chimed in the other day after I responded to this first comment that somebody had been watching for a certain length of time, and they said, I didn't know you had team channels. Well, this could be a problem here, because everybody, please know that we've got team channels, because we really need to streamline things here, and I'm not going to go into it. We're going to hold another live stream for all of you that are interested in the channel and what we do here. It's going to be a non-college football live stream, but we'll put that together at some point when there's not a lot going on, maybe early next week. We will talk about the channel, because I think it's obvious from the videos that get response and videos that don't get response, which is a lot of videos recently, that I clutter up this channel with so much that we need to strip this away and make this just a national college football channel. And therefore, a lot of the audience, potential 34,000 subscribers, well, it's really, the potential is the world, because 50-some% of the people that watch the videos don't subscribe. So, and I'm talking about my videos, not just in general, my videos. So we could have a lot more subscribers. And if most of them don't know that we have team channels, then they're not going to know where to find the content. So understand that we do have team channels. So just about any big team has a channel. Just about. I think at the top of the list of the teams that don't have channels would be Arkansas, Kentucky, Minnesota, UCLA. They would be at the top of the list. But just to run it down real quick, Oregon and USC in the Pac-12, Oklahoma, Texas, West Virginia in the Big 12. In the Big 10, we've got channels for Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Nebraska, Iowa. In the SEC, we've got an SEC channel We also have a Big Ten channel that nobody watches. So that's a whole other thing I was complaining about the other day. In the SEC, we've got an SEC channel, and we also have Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M. In the ACC, we've got Clemson, Florida State, Miami, North Carolina, Virginia Tech. Then we've got Notre Dame. So check out your team channels and help us grow the entire network. We'd like to get to 1,000 across the board on all of them. That would be huge. All right, on to our next call here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? DeAndre, how you doing?
DeAndre's here. Thanks for calling, man. What's going on?
Yeah, what was the subject the other night?
I'm sorry, what's that?
What was the subject the other night?
The subject?
Yeah. The night that the phone line started messing up.
Well, I just opened up by running down all the spring football games on Saturday and talking about what I'm going to be covering, and then just kind of gave a run through of all the teams that are highlighted on Saturday and what I think of them. I talked about Penn State and USC and West Virginia and Oklahoma and some others.
Yeah, but you were talking about something about coaching.
Who asked me about coaches?
Yeah, I was talking about you were listening to Mount Rushmore coaches.
Oh, well, that was the last show. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, so somebody.
Get down, boy.
I guess I made some kind of comment that I don't remember making, but I think it was Tim that called in and said, it sounds like your Mount Rushmore of coaches this century is in some order. And then he wanted me to order them: Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Dabo Swinney, and Pete Carroll. And I said, okay.
Right.
And then I put him in.
James was up there.
Who else?
I think somebody mentioned something about Don James and somebody else.
Well, that's going back before the
Washington
21st century. We were only going since 2000. Oh, the Don James.
Okay.
Oh, somebody else called up and they said, they gave me a list of Don James, Bo Schembechler, Tom Osborne, Barry Switzer, and somebody else, and said, who do you kick off that list to put on a Mount Rushmore? And you know what kind of stock I put in national championships. I put some stock, but not as much as most people do. But I was still kicking off Bo Schembechler, even though he's obviously a great all-time coach. But I don't remember what his list was.
Okay.
There was somebody else on there.
My question to that is, Mark, how do we rate Eddie Robinson?
How do we rate who?
Eddie Robinson, Georgia State, Grambling State coach.
It's hard to rate him because he, unless we're going to rate him against.
Would it be hard to rate?
He's hard to rate because they didn't play. These teams didn't play. So it's hard to rate.
But should we use the same thing with Bear Bryant? He only coached with.
They played, though. Bear Bryant was playing his teams that he recruited, that he coached, that he built the game plan around. He had to do everything along with his coaching staff. They played the teams that we would rate Bear Bryant against. He played Bud Wilkinson's teams and Ara Parsegan's teams and Woody Hayes' teams. So it's easier to rank the coaches and evaluate them versus Eddie Robinson. We know he was amazing. We know that he won a zillion games. What was it? 315 comes to mind, something like that, whatever it was. But his teams never lined up on a field against any of these other coaches we're talking about.
Is it his fault, right?
I didn't say it was his fault.
Well, no, I'm not saying you, but I'm just saying.
Of course, it's not his fault.
Look at it right.
But,
I'll give you an example. The coach at Mount Union, right?
Yep.
He made a choice to stay at Mount Union for however many years he was there. to my knowledge, up to 1968, Eddie Robinson couldn't go nowhere. Right outside of Grambling State, you couldn't go to Southern Cal. Wasn't going to hire him, no matter how progressive Southern Cal was.
Yeah.
So that's why I say, how do we rate Hill and John, Merritt, and coaches like that? How are we supposed to rate Bill when they did a great job too?
Let me put it this way. So I will say we can do this. Just like if you're asking me to evaluate Red Grange against Barry Sanders, I can say there's no way for me to evaluate that except for I know that athletically players have just gotten better and stronger and all that. So if we throw that away and say, okay, they played at completely different times against different defenses, etc., all we can do is say, how great was Barry Sanders against his competition versus how great was Red Grange against his competition? So I guess we could do the same here. We could say, how dominant was Bear Bryant and his teams against their competition for the zillion years that he coached? I think 1958 to 82, I think were his years. Anyway, that was just at Alabama. Anyway, versus Eddie Robinson versus his competition. So we can make that evaluation.
Yeah. So I just bring it up because I just want to remind and I'm saying that I didn't see Bear Bryant take. I think he retired when I was what? He retired with 82.
82. Yep.
Okay, so I was 5 years old. So I can't tell you much about Alabama team. I knew Clemson because my family played there, but I can't tell you much about Alabama team. And those were some of the better Alabama teams. It was like in the last 3 years of his career. I think they were playing in Liberty Bowl this last game, correct?
Oh, yeah.
So
Against Illinois. I remember watching it on Raycom Sports. Absolutely.
But I guess my point, I just want to remind other callers, there's more coaches than what we saw with Penn State and Bobby Petrino and Ben Bryant and all these other coaches. There were other coaches that they got their players in the NFL too. And we should pay them some homage when you say, well, who's on the list? I didn't create James. I mean, what's James' name, the coach at Washington? I remember those Washington teams. The Washington teams were really good when I was coming up. Mark Eaton and Kaufman and a couple of those other quarterbacks they had. They were really good teams when I was coming up. I remember Colorado. So I just say we only sometimes focus on the Bear Bryants of the world, and there's other coaches out there that did great things, but because they were in a different time period, we don't talk about them. I give them the amount of respect that they do. I just want to remind the callers. I remember I got called in. I don't know that's the night that the things was messing up, but the phone lines were messing up. I just want to remind people there were more coaches did that. Tennessee State coach, Florida A&M, Grambling State. There were more coaches that were doing great things. Morgan State had a great program, and I put deals in the 50s against Alabama any time of the week. And I think the Morgan State teams would have probably murdered Alabama in the 50s and 60s, 50s and 40s, because they had some really great teams at that time. But, it's not here or there. I know we can't go back and play history over. It's not a part of history. I don't think any of us want to play over because it was a terrible time in our history of our country. But as far as the spring games go, I really couldn't tell you much. I think I already said this one time about Clemson. I just think people need to give my boy a little bit more time this coming up year. But I do want to ask you, everybody talking about Clemson, talking about State. There's still some love for Carolina. But I got a dark horse for you in the ACC this year. Boston College. They got a very good coach.
Yep.
And a good quarterback.
Yep.
What do you think their chances are this year?
Well, they also have better skill position players than they've had in recent times. They've gone out there and gotten, like, they've got Zay Jones and Jalen Gill at skill position players. And again, Phil Jerkovic came back way too early last year, and that was pretty much talked about during the spring game. I watched their spring game. He hurt his wrist, unfortunately, the second game of the season, and then he rushed his way back, and they weren't playing for anything, but he just wanted to come back and play, and really he couldn't throw the ball. And he's going to be ready to roll, and he's really good. I was impressed with him from the first time I saw him play against North Carolina a couple of years ago. And yeah,
Right.
Jeff Hafley's a good coach. Yeah, I can see Boston College making some noise.
Another subject I want to talk about, and I don't want to say Alabama is going to not be good this year, but I see a tough road in the next 2 or 3 years for Alabama. Everybody say that every year, but you got Texas A&M who recruit at a high level, and Jimbo Fisher beat them last year. You got Kelly, who's a good coach, and he has more control over who can get into LSU. You got I hate to say this, but you got to think Auburn's gonna be better. Then you got the two bad handlers on offense, Mississippi and Ole Miss. And I know people are gonna say, "Well, we deal with that every year," but I would like to point this out. Back in the early, when Nick Saban started his run, maybe in 2008, 2009, up to now, up to what was Deshaun Watson's year, 2015. Pretty much everybody in SEC ran similar, like run the ball, cloud of the dust. You know, we could load up on defense and beat these guys. And teams that gave them trouble was Auburn with a running quarterback and Ole Miss. I wonder if this coming up next couple years, do you see Alabama pull back to the pack a little bit in the West of their conference, because the type of offenses and offensive minds they got and the better recruiting that's coming along over there. Hello?
Yeah. So you think Alabama's going to come back to the pack?
Well, I'm asking, do you think? Because
No.
you don't think Mississippi State on this, or I don't know about LSU. I haven't really followed it. I just go by what Lane Kiffin and I can't remember his name. The guy that was at Washington State.
Yeah, Mike Leach. So
and
LSU has talent, of course they do, but they probably have their worst roster, unless they really get aggressive in the transfer portal in the next few weeks. They probably have their worst roster since, maybe some LSU expert can jump in here, but I got a pretty good hold on their roster. I'd say this is their worst roster in 20 years. Now, it's not bad. That doesn't mean they're going to be bad, but they've been bad the last 2 years, and Brian Kelly's not going to fix all that immediately. And there are two quarterbacks battling for the position. They're good. They're talented. They've played. Of course, Jaden Daniels has played 3 seasons at Arizona State. Miles Brennan's played 3 or 4 games at LSU, but neither one of those guys has proven to be like a top-notch quarterback. And again, I think they're going to be scary for teams to play. Nobody's going to want to play LSU just like any other time, but they're a 7 or 8 win team.
Yeah. But I just saying, I don't think Texas A&M was great last year. I think we both bet A&M was going to. I think I put money on the money line at A&M instead of. I just see more teams having, hey, we can get Alabama this week. And I'm not saying Alabama doesn't have a great squad, but they're gonna play Tennessee this year. I think Tennessee's gonna be a little bit better, and I can see the possibility of Alabama losing 3 games this year.
3.
I'm not saying it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can see it. It's possible. Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is, like, go back with Ole Miss beat them, like, I think 2 years in a row. It was fluky wins. And I just think they got more teams that can win fluky versus them. And they're not on the A game every game.
Well, I got you.
Coming up this year or next year, too.
Every team.
I mean, like.
I was just going to say, every team in their division could beat Alabama. Like, it's possible.
Right.
It's not that they're playing Vanderbilt every week. Every other team in their division, they're playing the best division. All 7 teams are good. They're talented. They're top. They're all top 30 to 40 teams in the country. Yeah. And then they've got Tennessee, and I don't know who their other crossover game is. I think it's Vandy, but I'd have to look at it. Okay. So Tennessee. Now, Tennessee, as I told somebody a few minutes ago, let's not go crazy on Tennessee. I think they're a really interesting team, and Hendon Hooker had probably the best season that nobody paid attention to last year. 31 touchdowns, 3 picks, and their running game's devastating. Like, the thing that people don't realize about Josh Heupel, because they just know that he runs plays at warp speed and wants to push the ball, is that he believes in a running game. They run the ball at Tennessee, but they're still working on the defense. They've got a lot of work to do on a bad defense.
Right. And now they play Texas at Texas the first game of the year?
At Texas, game 2. I think it's game 2.
And see, that's what I mean. And like I said, I'm not knocking Alabama. I'm not an Alabama hater like some people are. I'm just saying, like, I really could see Alabama losing 2 or 3 games this coming up year.
I'd be pretty surprised if they lost to Texas.
Yeah, but I don't know who Texas played the first game of the year, but I mean, I haven't seen Quick Euros play, and nobody else has either. But I think he's like the first quarterback outside of Vic Young to ever have a perfect rating in the composite. I know that don't mean nothing on the football field, but I mean, I'm just saying, luckier things have happened on like that first or second week. Like you said, it was the first week. I probably have more faith in Texas with it because they got a whole summer to get ready for them. I don't know who Texas played the first game of their year, but
Alabama's got Utah State. Alabama's got Utah State, and not that Utah State's going to give them a game, but Utah State was a really good team that won a bowl game against Oregon State and finished 10-3 last year. I'll tell you who Texas has in a second here. So Alabama might be pushed, and when I say pushed, I don't want anyone to go crazy that thinks I'm meaning this the wrong. I don't mean that they're going to be in a fourth quarter game with Utah State, but they may not just be up 35-0 and be able to hit the showers. They might have to play for a half or more in that game. Texas's first game is, I believe, Louisiana Monroe. Yes. They're awful.
Yeah, they gave them a game last year, didn't they?
No, that was Louisiana. That was the Raging Cajuns, Louisiana. This is the Warhawks.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I would just say, possibility. First game, you got the whole summer to prepare for. I know a lot of people got off of Boise State and who they used to beat the first game of the year.
Yeah.
I was like, but they had the whole summer to get ready for that game.
Sure.
And then they don't play nobody else for the rest of the year. And but I mean, I just really think Alabama's going to be pushed the next year or two. I just think that they're going to come back a little bit. I'm not going to say they're going to have a year like Clemson had. Well, 2-3, but I'm just saying I don't see them just like straight dominating people. It's like I think people caught up with Ohio State a little bit in the Big Ten last year. It's like I think people caught up with Clemson in some ways last year. Because I think, like I told y'all, I think me, you and Bobby was talking to Pete, and I said, watch out for NC State. And y'all laughed at me because Dave Doran was not very popular, but every 2 or 3 years, Dave Doran will put up a team that he just, you know, they'll be like 6-6, 7-6. Then all of a sudden, bam, we really good this year. And, you know, they'll give Clemson a scare or two. But I think this is one of those years. I think Clemson's going to beat NC State really bad because they needed luck to beat them last year. But I think Clemson wants revenge for that game. But anyway, I just think they're going to be kind of Alabama is. But I just want to bring those points up, Mark. You have a great night, and I hope I can finish listening to the show. My house is acting weird for some reason. Like the phone keeps going out. I don't know why. But Mark, you take care of yourself.
Thank you, DeAndre. I appreciate it. Have a good one. Let's take this one more call here. And first, Uncle Rico is alerting me here. I saw a segment where they referred to Gus Johnson. Who's that? Yeah, we know who Gus Johnson is. As the voice of college football, I was furious. You should sue Mark. Uncle Rico was furious about this. Uncle Rico was furious. Furious. Uncle Rico, just by alerting me to this, you're getting me in a furious state as well about that. Somebody else was referred to. I don't care who he was. Gus Johnson, didn't he play for the Supersonics, right? The voice of college football. I was furious. Uncle Rico was furious about the. I'm furious about how dare him? So yeah, I'm furious about it as well. Thanks, Uncle Rico. We appreciate that. Did we have one more that we had to hit here on the super chat? I thought there was something else coming up. Somebody else. Exploring with Ben. Amazing Illinois spring game show. Can't wait for Rutgers tomorrow. Exploring with Ben. If you throw out an Illinois spring game and a Rutgers spring game, the world stops. There is nothing that's going to get in my way when Illinois and Rutgers are holding spring games. We have to go live with that Rutgers spring game, and we will be here live. I wanted to be here live tonight for the Illinois spring game, but I've got obligations on the Miami channel. And so, yes, Rutgers, we will not disappoint our fan base, our amazing Rutgers fan base. And I will run down for you, not tonight, but soon. Keep in mind, let me know who you root for. Write me at MarkRogersTV@gmail. Let me know who you root for. MarkRogersTV@gmail, because we're keeping track. And I posted this on the community page. So if you would like to see out of the roughly 180 people that have responded, what our fan total is. Trying to get a handle on who's watching us, what fan bases. Yes, Sour YT. Hell no. Michael. Some emotion. Just a little bit. Just okay. All right. Cheryl, did you enjoy that? The real MVP, I think he suggested at one point a Clips channel. Maybe we get that started. Do I get an Academy Award for that? Okay. On to our final call of the night. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Michael. How you doing?
Michael, what's going on? It was like Purdue just lost in the last 3 seconds. That's basically what I was envisioning, was the Boilers going down to Wisconsin in the last few seconds. That's got me
Oh,
mad.
that's happened before. But you need to show more emotion like that in the future.
Well, Michael, I will tell you this, that I'm an authentic person, so you're never going to see fake emotion out of me, except for when I'm just joking like I just did. So
I know.
what you get is what you get.
Yep. And I will tell you who those coaches were. It was Don James, Howard Schnellenberger, Jimmy Johnson, Tom Osborne, and Barry Switzer.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the coaches
Schnellenberger,
in both Quebec.
Schnellenberger, James, Johnson, Switzer, Osborne. Okay.
Yep.
I
Not
thought
bad.
Schembechler
But
was
just
on there.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
And stuff like so. I was going to say I didn't know how much of the spring game if you watched any of the game tonight
I did
for the
not.
Illini.
No, I was on the Miami channel.
Okay, this is one of the stuff like that. Now, I didn't know if you got a chance to. I seen a little bit of it. The offense was pretty good and stuff, but anyway, just getting your take and stuff. So Wisconsin, I can't remember if they're doing spring game, but in their USC's this Saturday, and I'm trying to think. In there, a couple others like Oklahoma. Have they done their spring game yet?
Oklahoma is tomorrow. We're going to do an Oklahoma post-game show tomorrow. Everybody listen up. We've got Penn State at 2, USC watch party at 3. We're doing West Virginia post. We're doing Oklahoma post. Yes.
All right. This is for Jeff. And then quit hating on Purdue. I don't know why you do that for. I'm not an Alabama fan, but I respect him. Anyway, Jeff, call in too, because you make the show fun when you call in too. That's if Mark lets you take your call and stuff like that. But no, this is one of the stuff I didn't know if you had changed. But what time will you be on tomorrow? After the
I'm going to be on
game tomorrow.
Going to be on at 2:00. The Penn State game starts at 2, but I'm going to have to cut over to
Tomorrow
the USC.
afternoon?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. No. I'm thinking it's Saturday. Tomorrow I'm going to be on at whenever the Rutgers game starts. I think it's at 7:30. 7 or 7:30.
Okay. No, I was wondering because you said Oklahoma, so they play Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
Okay. Just wondering stuff like that. All right. And that's what I was calling in about anyway. Thanks for taking my call. Have a great one, Mark.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good night.
Yeah.
All right. So Michael would like to see more emotion. All right. I will remember that. And maybe I'll bring in another host with more emotion is what I'm going to do. Is what we'll need to do, I guess. I was looking for something here. I got my Athlons. I got my Lindy's from last year. Those we can pitch in the trash. I was curious to find, since somebody reminded me there, but I don't think I have it here, do I? No, I don't. I don't know where that is. A lot of garbage from the the Internal Revenue Service and yeah. So anyway, yeah, not what I was looking for. What did I do with that? Yeah. Anyway, not going to go into what I was looking for there since I can't find it. All right, folks. All right. Who else is out there and what do you have to say? I think we're going to cut us loose here. Falcon Rex. Miami #1 on the field, #1 on turf. Falcon Rex, we have certainly given you the title as you have earned it of turf administrator, turf king, turf guru, turf czar. How about turf czar, Falcon Rex? Turf czar. Purdue's getting too much hype. Yes. Purdue gets a lot of, that's always the thing about Purdue. Every offseason gets more hype than anybody. I get sick of hearing about Purdue constantly. There's just constant talk about Purdue. Yeah. We'll take the show out to a field sometime, Falcon Rex, and we'll actually be pulling up turf. Maybe we'll compare different types of turf. Yes. Once we take this show on the road. All right. It's been a good time, everyone. Appreciate everybody being here. We will catch you all Friday night for the Rutgers watch party. Rutgers watch party. I never thought that I would be stringing those words together in the same sentence. The Rutgers watch party. Greg Schiano and the boys, the Fighting Scarlet Knights. And I'll get fired up about that. You want to see me get fired up? I'll get fired up about the Rutgers watch party. Mark Rogers, what do you want to see in college football? ESPN is why the SEC is dominant. I need some answers, sir. Never mind 5 different national championships this decade. If you can deliver that at another time, SEC dog, I really don't know what you're talking about. The SEC is the best because they recruit the best players. They have the best players in their footprint, and they recruit them, and they keep them at home. That's really what it comes down to. And because people in the South love football and love college football in particular, and because for decades and decades and decades, it had the least amount of professional teams that made college football even bigger in the South, well, they make a lot of money and they care about it. Therefore, they pump the most money into it, and they've got the most players in the high school ranks that they can recruit and keep at home. That's what it comes down to for the SEC dominance. And it's getting more and more perpetuated by people moving south, and they're moving west, but those players that are moving west are playing high school football out west, and they're going to SEC schools anyway. All right, watch party, Rutgers tomorrow night. We'll see you then here at the Voice of College Football. There's some really good content that we've posted recently with Steve Dace here on the main channel, and also with Steve Dace, Brian Driscoll, Notre Dame fans. Even if you're not a Notre Dame fan, I can just sit and listen to Brian Driscoll talk about college football. And I throw in my 2 cents, and there we go. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up. North Carolina State was mentioned by DeAndre. North Carolina State segment coming up as well here at the Voice of College Football. And here in the next few days, in addition to all the college football coverage, and we're going to go crazy on Saturday, we're going to come in here and we are just going to simply talk about the channel and some possible moves we're making with the channel. Nothing too crazy. I'm not going to throw a fit like I just did or anything like that, or we're not going to turn this into an Elvis channel, at least not yet. I'm contemplating it. But we'll see you tomorrow night for Rutgers Live.